Okay. Hello, I'm Jennifer Keller, the programming coordinator at the Westport Library with poet Jack Powers. His collection of poems is called Everybody's Vaguely Familiar. And in honor of National Poetry Month and the hashtag Shelter in Poetry campaign, we at the library are celebrating the art of the poem while stuck at home. Thank you for joining me, Jack.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Great. So I'd like to start off with, is there a poem that you're turning to during these really bizarre times? Is there some poet that's keeping you going through staying at home? And would you share it with us?
All right. Well, my, you first asked that question, I think of like Mary Oliver's, beautiful little nature, concise nature poems, or Billy Collins' funny poems. But as a writer, I tend to be looking for a different kind of inspiration and something stranger, I think. So the poem I thought of is a poem called Valentine for Earnest Man by Naomi Shihab Nye. And she said this poem came from, after a reading, someone came up to her, handed her his address and said, write me a poem. So Valentine for Earnest Man. You can't order a poem like you order a taco. Walk up to the counter and say, I'll take two, and expect it to be handed back to you on a shiny plate. Still, I like your spirit. Anyone who says, here's my address, write me a poem, deserves something in reply. So I'll tell you a secret instead. Poems hide. In the bottom of shoes, they are sleeping. They are the shadows drifting across our ceiling the moment before we wake up. What we have to do is live in a way that lets us find them. Once, I knew a man who gave his wife 2 skunks for a Valentine. He couldn't understand why she was crying. I thought they had such beautiful eyes, he said. And he was serious. He was a serious man who lived in a serious way. Nothing was ugly just because the world said so. He really liked those skunks. So he reinvented them as Valentines, and they became beautiful, at least to him. And the poems that had been hiding in the eyes of the skunks for centuries crawled out and curled up at his feet. Maybe if we reinvent whatever our lives give us, we find poems. Check your garage, the odd sock in your drawer, the person you almost like but not quite, and let me know.
Oh, that one's great. Thank you for sharing that one with us.
Thanks. Yeah, I love that poem. She's a great.
So everybody on, yeah. So everybody's stuck at home right now during this quarantine, and they're all talking about all these fabulous things that they're doing. Have you been writing any poems, and would you read one of yours for us?
Sure. Yeah, I've been writing. I've been working for the last 9 months on a collection of American sonnets about love and aging. And I'm really trying not to write about the virus. I try to get up and before I read any news, sit down and write while I'm still kind of in a half sleep state. I'm sure it's seeping in, all of the uncertainty of it. But mostly I'm writing as if we're not in the middle of this, I think. And some of the poems are kind of like stories. And some of them are more like collections of a few things that I have floating around in my head. And this one is more like the latter. It's called Leaving a Light On. A friend sends me a quote he keeps from his desk. Above his desk, he says, is by the Buddha. It reminds him that hope is an active verb. A person needs 3 things to be truly happy, it reads. Something to do, someone to love, and something to hope for. On the bottom of the email, he writes, pretty true. But when I feed the quote into Google, the first author to pop up is Tom Bodett, the Motel 6 guy who says, we'll leave a light on for you. And I start a theory that hope is a light we all need to keep on. But then, scanning down the list, I see Elvis, Immanuel Kant, and Rita Mae Brown also listed as authors. I finally trace it to the 1800s. And George Washington Burnap. No Buddha, but still pretty true. And pretty close to Viktor Frankl's 3 ways to find meaning. Finding someone to love, or finding something to do, or suffering nobly, if we conjecture hope is what enables us to nobly suffer. Except Bernat or Baudet or the Buddha demand all three for happiness, a higher bar than meaning. So I hope for happiness, knowing we'll all get our chance to suffer nobly.
Ooh, that one's good. I look forward to your new collection and reading that when it comes out.
Me
Great.
too.
You know, it's like fine wine. You got to wait a while.
Yep.
So if someone who's at home right now decided that they suddenly wanted to try writing poetry, what advice would you give that person?
Well, two things. First, I would recommend just sitting down and writing for 15 or 20 minutes without steering. Just grab a random word, start writing. If you get bored, jump to a new subject, and just see what comes up. Write as if you're your own first reader. And then look back through it and look to see where's something that has like a possibility, where's something that surprised you. Maybe there's one line you take, and then start writing a new draft of a poem with that line. Again, be very open to surprise. That's what you want, I think, in a poem. And don't think too much about, don't try to make something happen, make it mean something. Try to leave the English teacher in your head with the red pen in the other room for a little while. And another idea is to read poems that you really like for ideas, and then write about what they remind you of. So if you might take there's the William Carlos Williams poem, "This Is Just to Say I've Eaten the Plums," and then try writing an apology, especially maybe an apology for something that even as you're apologizing, you're thinking how great it was. They were so delicious and sweet. Or you might read a poem by, it's called My Physics Teacher by David Wagner, and write about a teacher, or especially a teacher who taught you something that was very different when what they thought they were teaching you. And then try to write your own version of that. And feel free to steal form ideas and techniques and whatever you need, because that's what we writers are doing all the time, stealing from each other. So, and just write it to someone, to yourself, or to someone you think might enjoy the memory.
Great. Thank you so much, Jack.
All right, well, thank you.
And thank you for sharing with the Westport Library community.
It's a great idea.
Those of you, oh, thank you. Check out Jack's collection of poems called Everybody's Vaguely Familiar. You can purchase it online, and you can check out his website, jackpowers13.com/poetry, for more information. For other author videos and information about the Westport Library, remember to visit westportlibrary.org. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And thanks again for inviting me.
Thanks.